how to create a very complete template in Excel budget that includes actual values. So let's say in this first sheet, I have my income, expenses, my expectations to all the months, the values. So salary, 2,000, side hustle, 250, mortgage, 1,000, and so on. And automatically within those gray cells throughout a formula, Excel is going to return the actual value that I did register within the second sheet, actual amount. So let me show you here an example. As we can notice, groceries in January is blank. However, if I go back to the second sheet, I want to add here $100 for groceries in January. And again, I want to add another value. Let's say 234. Enter to groceries in the January month. Now we have, of course, two values for groceries in January. And the total here is going to be 334. And if we go back to the first sheet, the budgeted amount, we can see that Excel automatically returns this value correctly. And that way we can compare the actual amount with the budgeted amount. So let's step by step from scratch create this template in Excel. So let's go. Let's get started with the budget template. So I want to click on the first row to select the entire first row, and then I can go to Home tab and change the fill color to a different one, maybe a dark blue. Of course, you can use the color that you like the most. Now on cell A1, the first cell, I can give it a name such as budget. That is going to be the name of my sheet. Then I can increase the font size to make it easier to see. Maybe I can use 36. And also I can change the fill color of this text. Okay, like this. Now that we already have the header of our sheet, we can go and separate the budget into two main groups. The first one is going to be the budgeted income and the budgeted expenses. Okay, so let me click on the third row and change the color maybe to a greenish one, and within the A3 cell I can give it a name such as income. And let's say we can skip 1, 2, 3, 4 rows. And in the fifth one, we can change the color to a reddish one or a orange one. We can go to the first cell of this row and give it a name such as expenses. Now we can register the income and the expenses that we have. So let's say as income, I have salary, side hustle, and so on. Of course, you can use your own categories. However, I'm going to keep up with those. As expenses, I can have mortgage, I can have electricity, I can also have gas, water, groceries, and so on. Of course, you can input here any different income and expenses. Be free to make this list bigger. Let me, in between column B and C, click, hold, and drag to the right to make sure I can increase the width of this column. Now I'm going to have two very important things. Of course, the months, to make sure we can plan the budget for each one of the months of the year. However, another thing that is very important is, of course, I need to have the months, but in this template right here is where I can register my planned amount for each one of the categories, and also is where we can use a formula in Excel to return the actual money in and money out for all the categories. So we're going to have both the formula and also the manual insertion, let's say, where we actually need to insert the budget for each one of the categories. However, let's begin with the months. I can have January, and then February, March, so on. In Excel, if I click on this cell at the bottom right corner, in the bottom right corner, click, hold, and drag to the right, Excel is going to continue the sequence for me, as you guys can see right here. January, February, March, April, and so on. However, I need to duplicate those months because I need to have 2 Januaries. One to myself register the planned value amount, and another January to Excel bring as result throughout a formula the actual amount. So let me, in between each one of those months, click on the letter of the column, right click, and then insert, just to make sure we can insert a blank column in between one month and another. And in between this month, what I can do is I can copy the previous cell, such as January, using, how can I copy in Excel? I can use the shortcut key, that is Control C, and then to paste, I can use Control V. So let me copy, Control C, and then Control V. Okay, now let me click on the column F, right click, and I can insert again, and then I can copy February and paste. Okay, I finish here to insert, copy, and paste all the months. Now I have two months that are equal to each other, January, February, and so on. What I need to do now, I need to tell Excel what is going to be the column to insert the budget, and what is going to be the column to have the automatically formula to return the actual value. So what I can do is I can click on the second row and then right click, insert. Excel, of course, copy and paste the formatting from the first row to the second one. However, I don't want to keep the formatting. I just want to have a blank row. So what I can do is I can go to any blank row here in Excel, such as the row number 20, click, right click, and then I can copy. Now I can go back to the second row, click, right click, and then paste. Yeah, that's it. Now in the first month is where we can insert the budget. So I'm going to write budget. In the second column, we are going to write actual. Okay, the actual is going to be a formula, so we might change the color later. However, let me select both of those cells, and in this bottom right corner, I can click, hold, and drag to the right until the end of the month, like this, because Excel is going to copy the sequence, budget, actual, and so on. Okay, now we almost done. What we can do now is we can, let's say, select the budget in the first January and change the fill color maybe to a light blue. Of course, I can also put everything in bold to make it easier to see, and align everything in the middle, and also centralize. I can do the same thing for the actual. However, instead of use a blue color, I can use a gray because it's going to be a formula. Now let me select both of those cells, and then I can copy with Control C or right click, copy. Then I can select all the other cells, right click, and then I can go to formatting, because I just want to paste not the values but the formatting. If you can't find this option with the right click, you can go all the way here to the top and click paste, and then you want to paste options, formatting. Okay, very simple to find. Now let's insert here the budget for all the categories, January, February, March, and to all the months that we have. So let's say my salary for January, the planet is going to be $2,000, enter, and side hustle maybe 250, enter. For February, the salary is going to be the same, so 2,000 again. However, I don't want to do it over and over again to all the months. So what I can do is I can select those first two cells. Okay, you're not going to select just the first one or the 3 cells. No, you're going to select the first 2. And then in the bottom right corner of the cell, you can click, hold, and drag to the right, because Excel is going to copy the sequence. And of course, maybe Excel is going to create actually a sequence, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. However, if you want to copy only the values, you can click in this little tag right here, and you can go to copy cells. Simple as that. Now we already inserted here all the budgeted salary for all the months. Side hustle, I'm going to fill here February, maybe 300, and that's it. I done. Mortgage is going to be 1000 throughout all the months. So again, I can select, click, hold, and drag, click in this little tag, and then copy cells. Electricity 100, gas 50, 30 as water, and groceries, let's say 500. Okay. Now let me select all those cells and the cells to the right. At the bottom, click, hold, and drag to the right because Excel is going to continue the sequence for me. And okay, yeah, that's it. Now I have here the budgeted amount to all the months. Another thing that we can do is we can add here a total. So let's say, what is the sum to all the income and all the expenses? This is what we can do now. So in some rows underneath, maybe 17, I can add total income and also total expenses. Let me click on the row 17, and I want to change the color to a green one, and the total expenses to a reddish one. The total is going to be a very simple formula, that is equal sign, sum function. Make sure you use the equals sign because that way you can open this list and you can select the first option, sum. Double click, 1, 2, and I want to add up the values within the January budget. Enter. I want to do the same thing, equal sign, sum to the expenses. Enter. Now what I can do is I can click and select both of those cells. At the bottom right corner, click, hold, and drag to the right, because that way we make sure Excel copy this formula to the right. Now we have the addition to all the months, budget and actual, throughout the year. Now what we can actually do is we need to fill the cell here with some formulas to return the actual, but not budget, but the actual amount of money in and money out, income and expenses on our daily basis. So let me change this sheet name to right click, rename, budget, budgeted amount. Enter. And I want to add a new sheet. Click on this plus sign, and this new sheet is going to contain the actual amounts or the actual values. This is where we're going to register all the money in and all the money out. So let me click on the first row, and again I want to give it a color. However, this time maybe I can use a yellowish color. I can click on the first cell and give it the name such as actual amount, money in and out. Enter. Let me click on cell A1, increase the font size maybe to 28, I think. Yeah, or 36. Yeah. And I want to change the font color to a darker yellow, like this. Let me compare it to the previous one. Yes, I think it's very good. The information that we need here is going to be, first, Excel needs to match the month with the month. So let's say you have a actual income in February. Excel cannot summarize this value into January. However, it needs to be inserted in February. And to do it, we need to have a month column here in this template. So I can start in column B with the month. And of course, we can have here the category that can be either income or expenses, the whole list that we have. Then we can have the value and maybe some description or some note. Okay. Let me increase the column B, clicking between B and C, hold and drag to the right. The category is also going to be wider, column D, column E. Okay. So instead of manually type the months such as January, March, and so on, I think it's easier if we have a drop-down list to just click and choose the month that we need to use. And to create this list, of course, we can do it manually. However, I think it's easier and faster if we add here a new sheet, right click, rename, and call it months, enter. And within this sheet, the only thing that we can do is we can click in any cell and write the first month of the year. At the bottom right corner of the cell, click, hold, and drag to the right until December. Yeah, that's it. Now we can use those cells as the range of our list. So let me click in this cell, the cell underneath the month, and then I can go to data and then data validation. Instead of use any value, I can use a list, and within this up arrow, I can click and go to months and select all the months that I have. Down arrow and then OK. And that's it. Now we can choose here the specific month. So let's say in January, I have as the category, let me gain data validation, create a list using allow list. And as the source, I can select the budgeted amount sheet and use all the names that I have here. That's it. Down arrow and then OK, and that's it. Now as the category, I want to select, let's say, salary. The value is going to be 1900, and I can use a note or I can leave it blank. Let me select all those cells, this entire data set, and I can go to insert a table. A table in Excel is going to be very important because I'm going to show you with a practical example. So table, make sure you check this checkbox. My table has headers. Okay. As I was telling you, a table is very important because whenever you insert new rows, all the informations that you have, drop-down list, all are going to be in this new row. So let's start always with the value, okay? Because if you click in a blank cell, there's no drop-down list here. So we can start always with the value. So let's say value, 35, enter. 35 what? 35 is my gas bill in January. Simple as that. That's it. And of course, I can continue to insert new data here into my table. However, the big question now is, how can I automatically summarize those values using the category as a criterion and also use the months as a criterion and insert those informations in the right place within my budgeted amount? To do it, we can use in Excel a formula that is equal sign SUMIFS. A sum formula in Excel can, of course, add up values, but the sum function or sum formula is going to add up all the values that you have within the range. I don't want to add up all the values because I have an amount that corresponds to salary, another amount that corresponds to mortgage, and so on. And of course, for each one of the months. So I need to use a criteria to separate those additions or those values. One value is going to be in February, another one is going to be for salary, and so on. So let me go to SUMIFS, double click. That is a function that helps me add up value using criteria. First of all, sum range. What is the sum range? What are the things that I want to add up? The things that I want to add up are here in the actual amount. So I can click and I can select the value, click and hold and drag down, okay? Make sure you select only the values. You don't need to select the header. If you want to select the header, of course you can. However, I don't think it's important. So select only the values like this. And Excel is very clever. So within the SUMIFS function, it's telling me the table that I'm using is the table 1. And of course, this is the name of my table. And the column that is being used is the value. And of course, it's correct. Okay, so that's it. Comma. When I hit comma, I can move to the second argument that is going to be the criteria range. The first criteria range. And it can be either month, category. So let me select maybe the month. So I can click, hold, and drag month, comma. And what is going to be my criteria? my criteria, because I selected the criteria range as the months, I also need to select the month that I want to use as my criteria. So let me go to the budgeted amount, and my first criteria is going to be the January, the name that I have within the 3 cell. That's it. However, it's very important here to lock this reference, because I don't want this reference be free to move down, up, to the left, or to the right. Because when we copy the formula down to all the income and expenses that we have, the reference in Excel is also going to be moved and follow along the copy and paste. However, I want to make sure the month always stay in the 3rd row. Of course, it can change. It can be D3, it can be E3, it can be F3, G3. However, always on the 3rd row, but it can change the columns. So to make sure it is possible, I can use the F4 key in my keyboard. So F4 key, and we can see we have 2 dollar signs. One locking the column, another one locking the row. The one locking the row is right. However, the one locking the columns, I don't need this. So let me press again F4 key, and yeah, that's it. Now, as we can notice, the dollar sign is only locking the row and is letting the column free to be changed. So A, B, C, D, E, and so on. Jopa. Now my second criteria range is going to be the category, Jopa. And just to make sure you guys don't have any questions about it, I don't need to lock the category, the value, the month, because in Excel here, I'm not using a cell reference. I'm using the name itself, the name of the column, the name of the table. So it's not going to change, okay? Now my second criteria, because I just selected the category, is going to be the categories itself. So let me go back to the first sheet, and I can select the first name that I have. And of course, again, I don't want this name to move to the right or to the left, because if so, I'm going to lose the reference. It can move up or down to take all the other references, such as side hustle, mortgage, and so on. So I need to lock the column B and let this reference free to move in the row 5, 6, 7, 8, and so forth. So let me go here, and again, with the F4 key, I can lock the reference. So F4 key, one more time, F4 key, one more time, F4 key. And as we can notice, the dollar sign is only before the letter or the column, and it's right. We're done. So let me hit enter. Okay, salary, the budgeted value was 2,000. And the actual value is 1,900, so we are under budget, or we are on budget. The problem is when we are over budget. But let me click and hold in the bottom right corner and drag this formula down. Now let me copy any formula that we did, Ctrl C, and paste to all the other rows. Ctrl V, simple as that. And as we can notice right here, the gas already is filled with 35, and it's correct. And again, we are under budget here. And let me select the actual value formulas that we have, and then I can go to Home tab and make sure we can change the color to a gray one. And also I want to do the same thing here to the formulas within the expenses. Okay, now I can copy everything that I have like this, select everything, Ctrl C, move to the next column, the column where, of course, we need to use the formulas, Ctrl V, and again, Ctrl V, Ctrl V, Ctrl V, and so on. We can do it for all the months that we have, and the formulas is going to be automatically working. Now, let's make sure it's everything okay. Let me input here a new value, maybe 1,500. The category is going to be mortgage, and the month is going to be May. I want to include another value. Let's say, again, I have a mortgage. Of course, it's very rare to have this 2, 3, 4, 5 values to the same category in the same month. However, it can happen, right? Let's say we have many categories, such as groceries. Of course, I can have $100 for groceries in January, and then I can have again $300 for groceries in January, and so on. As we can notice right here, groceries in January, the total is going to be 400. 100 plus 300. And if we go back to budget amount and we go to this specific category, groceries, we can see the value is correct. And now that we have everything working, we're done. So we already have the budget sheet and also now the actual amount, money in, money out sheet. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And of course, if you have any questions or any suggestions to a next video, let me know, comment down below, and I see you in the next one.